Hello and welcome to episode 2 of the SME Data Podcast. I'm Helen Ward, part of the Data Cube team, and I am delighted to be here today with Rhys Williams. Rhys, please do introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Rhys. I am strategy director at Quiet Room. Quiet Room is a communications business.
Mhm.
We work with clients who are in really important but unloved areas like pensions, investments, insurance, health, sustainability, basically all the stuff that really affects how well off we are in the long term, but stuff we'd probably rather not think about today. So our business is all about unlocking those complicated areas so they become more meaningful to more people. So we've got a team of writers and strategists who are experts at kind of understanding all that knotty complexity and unpacking it and make it feel real for people in the proper outside world.
Great, thanks for sharing that. So
You're
obviously
welcome.
we've had the sort of the pleasure of working with you guys, and I'd sort of love to sort of start off the conversation by sort of hearing about what you think the biggest challenge has been around data for you guys.
So, like most businesses, I think we had way more data available to us than we made use of.
Mm.
And I'd say I mean, I've been at Quiet Room 15 years,
Hmm.
and at the beginning, our data was in a book. We had a black book in which, if you looked up under R, you'd find R for relay cabs. So it was that, because that kind of that sort of level of, like my dad, who if you want to find the number of the leisure centre, you look under S for swimming. Um, but so we've kind of gone through that period where suddenly we were, like lots of businesses, take advantage of lots of, sometimes you know um, cloud-based stuff, sometimes software
Hmm.
packages that hold a lot of data. And um, our I remember, so I saw a post that Data Cubed put up on social media, I think it was, um, which described the different rungs of data maturity. And I looked
Hmm.
at the bottom and I thought, that's us. So we were
Mm.
doing, so we were using the data, so that's brilliant. Well done us, big tick. But it was very manual,
Yeah.
very time consuming, very prone to error. And I suppose critically, and this is
Hmm.
kind of where our work together is centered so far, is that we couldn't get all the bits to talk to one another and to correspond with one another. So we have a system, CRM system,
Hmm.
that we use to record the interactions we have with our clients and prospective clients. We have a project management system
Yeah.
that collects everything to do with time and money. We've got an invoicing and an accounting system that does everything to do with billing, and um, they don't join up, or at least they haven't until we started working together. So I suppose the big thing that will help us move from where we are now, which is this kind of, we're using it, we're getting loads of valuable insight from it, but it's incredibly hard work, to something that's hopefully a bit more
Hmm.
integrated, with a bit less friction in the
Mm.
process. That means that it's not like something I do once a year and takes me 3 months. That it's insight we can be getting
Yeah. Yeah.
in a much easier way and a much more timely and frequent way.
Yeah. Okay. And would you say, and other than sort of getting some outside help, is there anything else that you've done internally that's helped you to overcome those challenges? How have you got everyone on board with that?
Um, so it's a good question. Um, I feel like, in a way, I said we were at the bottom, but there was a rung below where we are. So if you think about it, we started off having no data, um,
Hmm.
or at least the data we had was so analog and unstructured that you couldn't make any use of it. If you wanted to find out what invoices we'd sent out, you'd have to look in a folder. Um, and
Mm.
then I think that, so the first thing we did ourselves was obviously digitizing everything. And I mean, this sounds so like caveman style, but you've got to bear in mind this is like over 15 years. So I'm talking about like 10 years ago, probably.
Yeah.
Um, and so I'd say,
Reassuringly common as well.
well, yeah, of course. But like, if you so the next thing was just getting in a position where they had the means to record and manipulate data digitally. Then after that, you realize quite quickly that what holds you back, probably more than your ability to work with the data and to, do all the stuff that I was telling you about just now, to integrate and all that sort of stuff. It's only ever as good as the data itself. So, I joked about, the leisure centre under S for swimming, but if you basically carry that level of rigor into the digital world, then you're no better off than you were when you had it in a book, except that the book was cheap
Yeah.
and the database is expensive. And so the next thing, I suppose, for us then was making sure that the data that went in was good enough. So that was stuff like being able to say, to split our business up by the kind of work we were doing, by the sort of clients we were doing it for, understanding how did we win that client, and then understanding how much profit did we make on each individual project and each individual client relationship. So you've got to make sure that you're measuring all the right stuff, that you're not getting distracted by stuff that is, the TBU, true but useless, and that you're really focusing in on what's really important. So we had to kind of like decide what was important to us, and with quite a lot of trial and error. So we'd gone through all of that. We'd got into the kind of the discipline of making sure that we're collecting data and it's accurate on the way in. And I think that's a work in progress, because I do think like everything, that there's the second law of thermodynamics is that entropy increases. And I think that's true in businesses, that systems that a business puts in place are prone to degrade. So you always have to keep renewing, refreshing, refining the systems so that they stay together. And actually, if you say, I think we've nailed the perfect system, and leave it, it will probably become imperfect over time. So we did all of that before ever thinking about going for external help. And I suppose the last bit of the jigsaw was then that when we had data that we could trust, and this is comparatively recent, but I'm talking about in the last year or two, when we had data that we could trust, making sure that we were looking at it, thinking about it, and learning lessons from it, because the whole point of this is to be a better business. The data is not an end in itself. It's the decisions that arise from our analysis of the data that we hope will pay us back. So making sure you do something with it. And actually, we've done a lot. We've made a lot of changes based on what the data has been telling us that have been proved to be very successful. So I think that gave us the confidence then to say it is time to step up a bit, and it's time to seek some external help and to get ourselves up one more rung again.
And what would you say the biggest lesson was for that? Because obviously you've talked about getting KPIs into place and measuring stuff that's truly valuable to you. Has that been sort of refinement process? Has that been sort of the biggest learning?
There's so many learnings. It's hard to say what the biggest one has been. The biggest learning is, and I think this would apply to
you
any.
Have a top three if you want.
I don't
want to put you into
I might do that. The biggest one for me is that all of this is futile unless the data that's in there is right. So actually getting the human stuff right is probably the most important thing. So actually everybody understanding why is the right data useful to us? Why is it worth your time? Understanding how do you get people to stick to a system and stick to a plan? I'll give you an example. That timesheets, we do timesheets, so every minute of every day that I spend at work is recorded. So I can, when I say recorded, I don't mean recorded like we're recording now. Just to be clear, it's not like 1984.
That would be strange.
But the point is, I know roughly down to 15-minute increments what I've done for the last 4 or 5 years, and I tell you what, that's fantastically useful. But in the past, it was really onerous, and because it was onerous, people didn't do it consistently enough. So we just made it simpler, got a better platform for getting into it. You also get used to the platform over time. So the platform gets easier over time. And yet still, it's someone's job to chase me every Monday. And that's not their
Yeah.
only job. But the point is that you still sometimes need a chase, even after all of that. But once the data's
Hmm.
in and you know it's accurate, then everything else is built on that foundation. So I suppose that would be, if I was trying to advise someone who was in a similar position to us, like a few years back, it would be concentrate on
Yeah.
getting your data quality good on the way in, because it's so
Hmm.
hard to clean it after the event, and it goes
Yeah.
out of
Yeah.
date really quickly.
Hmm. And was that about more about the people, or
Yeah,
was it about
yeah.
the?
I mean, it wasn't even more about the people. It was exclusively about the people.
Yeah.
But also
Yeah, for sure.
I suppose, having systems that support the people, so that, like, if the system's rubbish, you should blame, and
Hmm.
the person fails, you don't blame the person. So you've got to have a system that's makes it easy for that person to do the right thing. And if doing it right is the easiest
Yeah,
option, that is how you'll get people to stick to a system.
definitely. So within that, then obviously you've been on a great journey up until now. What would you say are the biggest opportunities that you see from here?
So from here, the biggest opportunities are, um, ultimately, I don't feel like we're at zero yet. So I don't feel that
Hmm.
we are yet, and this will come very soon. We are
Mm.
yet to really benefit from the integration that I've talked about. So that, we the work that we've done with Data Cubed, that it first begins
Yeah.
by pooling all of the data we have, specifically from three sources, and we're just at the stage now where we're confident that's working well. And then the next thing is, well, what does this stuff tell us? Now we have the ability to see the join in a way that we couldn't before. What does it tell us? So
Yeah.
we're prioritizing
Hmm.
now what we want to do next. In other words, how do we want to get the value from the money that we've spent and the time we've spent getting to where we are now? And the value
Hmm.
the value for us comes across in two ways. And the one is, does it save us time? So if
Hmm.
there is a really onerous manual process at the moment that, um, we think we definitely need to do, but humans don't need to do it because machines can do it for us, then that's vital.
Yeah.
The other dimension on the,
Hmm.
two axes, the other dimension. I'm glad this is a video interview rather than an audio interview, because otherwise you'd have missed my, like, X factor miner. But the other axis is
Not once
is
a myth.
value adding. Does it tell us something we don't currently know?
Hmm.
And can we actually do
Yeah.
something potentially earth shattering with that? And so if you've got something that is
Hmm.
both time saving and value adding, then awesome. That's where you should kind of prioritize.
There you
Now,
go.
I imagine anyone watching this, they'll have their own metrics, their own axes on the in the 2 by 2 matrix.
Yeah.
But for us, when we're
Hmm.
thinking about where to go next, so I'll give you an example about how we're going to use it. So at the moment, um,
Sounds good.
we've got, so let's look at kind of pre-sales and sales as a beginning. So actually, in fact, I'll explain the way our kind of whole journey works, and then you'll see why being able to join up different parts
Go
of the
for it.
journey helps. So we've got
Hmm.
kind of four bits to our operating model, and the first thing is we have to create opportunities to win work. So that means, um, meeting people, having conversations, building relationships. It means growing
Hmm.
our reach and our
Yeah.
reputation and our profile. So it's kind of the pre-sales and marketing thing, all of that business development stuff that
Hmm.
involves us creating content that people want to watch, writing blogs and putting things on LinkedIn, talking at conferences, going out and meeting people, networking, having conversations, following those conversations up, nurturing those relationships to the point where we're talking about, actually there might be something we can do to work together. So that's kind of stage one of our
Yeah.
process, is that. Then you've got a bit which is, once you've created
Hmm.
those opportunities, you have to convert them, and that is, writing
Hmm.
proposals, doing giganto tender documents, pitches, negotiation. all of that contractual stuff, all of that stuff. Then you've got the bit that is about literally delivering the work, that a project. So, you
Hmm.
know, when we start, when we finish, when we bill, what time do we spend doing it? How does that relate to what we thought we'd do, and all of that kind of stuff. And then you've got
Hmm.
when the project finishes, how do you turn what is at this stage in the life cycle of a client? That's a one hit wonder. It's one project. How do you turn that into a
Yeah.
relationship of many projects, and actually beyond the projects, just a mutually beneficial partnership? That we've got people who.
Hmm.
So for instance, Helen, not you, Helen, other
Hmm.
Helen of Data
The other one.
Cubed was a client of ours. So was a client of ours
Yeah.
when she worked at AXA. Was a client of ours when she
Hmm.
worked at Computershare. We kept in touch, and now we're a
Yeah.
client of hers at
Yeah.
Data Cubed. So that relationship has gone beyond a project, beyond a number of projects, beyond a number of client relationships or billing relationships, into a thing that's just a mutually
Hmm.
beneficial two-way thing. So when you look at all of that and now think about that through a data lens, well, how many conversations are we having and who are they with?
Hmm.
How many conversations are about
Yeah.
us getting to know one another and having those early stage relationship type conversations? And how many of them are conversations about potential work? Then when you get into the conversion side of things, well,
Mm.
how many proposals are we writing? And on how successful are we at
Mm.
converting them? That if we've
Yeah.
Let's imagine there's a net kind of X to Y of all of the proposals we write in a given year, where, let's imagine that it's £1 to £10. Well, how many of those pounds do we convert, as well as how many of the numbers of opportunities? Then when you get into the jobs as well, how long do they take us?
Mm.
Which jobs involve most effort? There isn't a direct relationship between time and money in our business. We tend more to price work by value than by time. I mean, nobody asks, when you buy an iPhone,
Mm.
nobody says, "Hey, sorry, can you just tell me, did it take you 3 or 4 days to make this?" It's you don't care, do you? You just get the thing and it does a job for you. But it's a really
Exactly.
useful measure of trying to understand, well, how much effort did it take to make this pound? And clearly, if there's a way of making a
Hmm.
pound that takes an hour, that's preferable to a way of making a pound that takes a day,
Yeah.
because you can fit more of the
Yeah.
previous
Yeah.
kinds of jobs into your life than you can of the other ones. So, and then that's when all that data
That's
then
it.
becomes really useful. So you start to go, well, okay, well, what work is the hardest? Where is there most
Hmm.
effort? And we have, as well as having a basic measure of time and money, which is, how much profit did we make on a job? How much profit did we make per hour on that job? And a kind of combined look at
Hmm.
that. Then there's also all the softer things, like how much fun did we have? We give things a fun score.
Yeah.
Um,
Hmm.
they're pretty variable, let me tell you. Some jobs are loads of fun, some not so much. And then how much did we learn? How many people did we meet? People who we think will be useful contacts to us in the future? Are we furthering our purpose as a company? Are we doing work that we think is meaningful, where we're having meaningful impact? Can we measure the results? All of these kinds of things can be
Mm.
given a number. Yes, a subjective number compared to the
Yeah.
pure like pounds and seconds, but it's
Hmm.
nevertheless it's a measure. So now you go, and then once we've done that one project, well, when's the next one come along? How big is that? How does that relationship grow and change over time? What percentage of our clients are we retaining?
Hmm.
Are we growing that business, or is that business shrinking and tailing off? That um,
Hmm.
These are the only questions there are. If you're trying to run a business, these are the questions. Which is, how
Yeah.
can we do more of the stuff that leaves us better off? And as I said, we measure
Hmm.
that in a very sort of rounded and holistic way. Money is a big part of it,
Hmm.
it's not the only part. Like, are we doing
Mm.
stuff that's working? Are we doing stuff that's leaving us better off? And if we're not, can we tweak this system? Can we pimp the machine? Can we change the blend in order
Yeah.
to be in a better position? And really, that's when I'm talking about the
Hmm.
opportunities. They're endless, because if you
Mm.
look and you've got the information and you're an intelligent person, you can read that information and interpret it, and draw some conclusions from it, then you can start to make decisions which just leave you demonstrably better off. So I can look at some of those figures
Absolutely.
from over a few years and just watch that line, slowly climbing
Hmm.
upwards as we become a better
Yeah.
and better business because we looked at the data and we listened to what it was telling us. Have you noticed that I've
Yeah.
started to really rant now? I'm
Absolutely.
not quite banging the table, but I'm not far
Yeah,
off.
no, it's good. It's good to hear this. I was about to thank you for describing that because it's really useful to hear in a real life environment how that plays out for you,
Yeah.
because it's the same situation a lot of businesses will be in. So that's good to hear. Thank you for
Yeah,
that.
and like
I think
whether you're a crab meat processing factory, or whether you're a
yeah.
leotard designer, or whether you're dolphin trainers, or whether you're quiet room, that
Hmm.
you're trying to work out how do you get the best return for your effort.
Yeah,
Like where
absolutely.
should we
And
put
how
our
would you
energies
say,
to be better off?
yeah, and how would you say that reliance on data is kind of, obviously you're going on a great journey, but how is that changing the business? Would you say that sort of reliance on data over the past
Well,
few
I'll give you an
years?
example. I'll give you an example. We worked out that uh, the fastest growing and most lucrative source of work for us were relationships that we made through networking. So it's kind of like it's a client, so a little bit like the situation I was telling you before. You've got a client who works in one company, who moves to another company, who takes
Yeah.
you with them. You've got a client
Mhm,
who,
mhm.
when somebody asks them, who should I work for? Who should I work with to write this really complicated thing that helps people understand a really important area? Oh, you should talk to Quiet Room. That,
Yeah.
whether it's, oh yeah, I met them at this industry event, or we were on this working group together, or we were on the same conference panel, or we met at lunch at an event, or
Mhm.
those sorts of things. And that accounts for the greatest proportion of value when we look at how our the sources of good work for us. And so we've grown that team.
Mhm.
So we had one person doing it, then we had
Mhm.
two people. We've got kind of two and a fifth. I know, silly to think of a fifth of a person, but we know that doing that will pay us back. We know
Yeah,
that
for sure.
we
And
know
what
that when we produce content, so this is like creating videos and material and that sort of stuff. That whilst it doesn't necessarily win us a load of work, the work that it wins us is very valuable. So
yeah.
we're now happy to invest our time and our money in that. Um, for example, I know now, I did for the whole of last year, um, I know how everybody at Quiet Room split their time across those four areas I was talking about, so creating opportunities, converting them, delivering
Mhm.
the work, and then turning those projects into relationships. That I know how many hours we put into all of them.
Yeah.
So I can go, oh, we're not putting enough in there.
Mhm.
We need to up that. And then I
Yeah.
go, okay, but well, unless we up the total number of hours available across the team, well, something's got to go. So what's going to go? Well, let's stop doing this thing over here that's not so
Mhm.
effective. And actually, if you go, oh yeah, we'll get
Mhm.
person X to do that, and I go, look, person X is 86% billable, so she ain't got any time, and the rest of
Yeah.
the time is like lunch hour and team meetings. You can't. There's no
Mhm.
time for, she can't do it unless she drops something, and if she drops something, somebody else has got to
Mhm.
pick it up. I wouldn't know any of that if I didn't have the data. The other thing I think it's prompted us to do is just really specialize. So we were pretty
Mm.
specialist anyway, but we're even more specialist now than we have been in the past. And in fact, I'd say every year we get a little bit more specialist. So our niche becomes narrower every year, and our
Mhm.
business grows. So I know it sounds silly going for a smaller market. You can get more money, but you can because
Yeah.
you just become super expert at it. You know all the people, you know all the
Mhm.
stuff, and you can do the work more quickly, and you can command a higher premium for your time. So it's
Yeah.
and all of these things have been data driven to a greater or a lesser extent, and we're kind of
Mhm.
we're not replacing gut feel ever, but
No.
but gut feels quite often wrong, and
Mm.
and the data
Yeah, and
doesn't.
having something to back it up.
Yeah, and the data really, it either backs up your gut feel or it just proves you wrong. And if it proves you wrong, then awesome, saved you from making a mistake.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. Okay. And what would you say have been the most useful tools that you've adopted in the business to help make all this happen?
Um, Tools. Uh, I think one of the biggest things that's helped us is a clear understanding of the metrics that matter to us.
Yeah,
So
that's a good
actually
place to
having
start.
a handful of KPIs that you go, well, look,
Hmm.
if we're doing well here, we know we're doing well. And they have to be a mixture of kind of leading and lagging indicators. So I have to look at a number now
Hmm.
that tells me how well I'm going to do in 3 months. And I have to look at a number that tells me how well I did for the last 3 months. Um, you
Yeah.
need a bit of all of that. So you need to be able to learn lessons in hindsight, but
Hmm.
equally you need to be able to predict the future a little bit. So I think that's really helpful.
Hmm.
And we had, we come up with all kinds of daft names for things, but we came up with an idea around about the time of the financial crisis, called the Index of Doom. And I'll tell you about what it is now, in case you're interested. But I like lots of businesses, and we
Absolutely.
were pretty young in to 2008, 2009, when there was, the financial crisis. And
Yeah.
um, we we came close to the brink, and we were determined never to never be in that precarious position again. And it's kind of shaped our
Mm.
behavior over the subsequent 12 years, really. But I read in a book by Jim Collins, I can't remember which one it was, From Good to Great or Built to Last, or From Great to Even Greater. I can't, one of those kind of, big, like you buy at the
From good to
airport,
great.
giganto business books. Um, and he talked about the fact that businesses need cash reserves in the same way as you need an oxygen tank when you're diving under the ocean. And you need to make sure that if I'm down there for two
Yeah.
hours, I'm still going to be breathing when I come up. So we began
Hmm.
to measure the length of time that we could continue if no more new work got signed off. So basically, assuming the work that's
Mm.
been committed and signed off today, and the money in the bank, how many months would we
Hmm.
go? So it's measured in months. We decided that
Yeah.
we were going to call it the Index of Doom if it was under 6 months, and joy, in Index of Joy if it went over 6 months. Um, Even though it went way over 6 months over time, it was only ever the Index of Doom because it's just a better name. Uh, so so that so
It
so
is.
having those kind of metrics really really helped. And then we've just
Yeah.
pieced together a suite of different platforms that are useful to us. So we use Zoho for CRM. We
Mm.
use a platform called Synergist for time and project
Hmm.
management and money stuff, and we use Cashflow for invoicing and accounting. Um, and I think in the past we might have been tempted to try and find one platform that did all those things, but I think that the world doesn't really work like that. That things tend to be good for what they're good for.
Mm.
There's a reason why I have a
Yeah.
lot of business calls on Teams and a lot of personal calls on Zoom. They're good for
Mm.
different things, and I
Yeah.
think that it's a good idea to have a load of specialist tools that do specific things, provided that you can do what we're talking about doing, which is using APIs to facilitate useful and productive connections between all those
Hmm.
platforms. Did I answer your question? I feel like I
Yeah.
just sort of
That's it.
like rambled in the background. Is that all right?
No, you did. The tools were in
I did
there.
ramble in the
The tools
background.
were
Oh,
in
good.
there.
Yeah, yeah,
But it's about
yeah.
bringing those together, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It is.
Yeah, it's
It
about
is because
knowing what information you can trust and bringing that together.
yeah, and so I'll give you an example of how, like going back to what I was saying about the connections. So imagine if I said this is the most profitable kind of
Hmm.
work, and then I go, how likely are we to convert these things? What sort of conversations do we
Hmm.
need to have in order to create that profitable work? How many of them do we need to have? Um, so we've got an idea. When I look at a year, what is a good amount of activity?
Hmm.
If I know that
Yeah.
uh, a certain proportion of the conversations we have are going to lead to that number of pounds, well, I now got a means of knowing whether we're any good or not.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. Gives you better confidence in your business and your approach. And like you say
Yeah,
around niching, it's so powerful to help you do that and give you the confidence to put those plans into action.
yeah, and to do more than just make a lucky guess.
Yeah, yeah,
To be able to make some really educated, like, I'm going to do this because nothing is certain to pay you back. But this is,
yeah,
the things we're doing, we're as certain as we can be that these are good things for us to be doing.
for sure. And building on those, where do you see yourself in 12 to 24 months' time from here? Where would you like to be?
I'd like to be able to open up my laptop, to click an icon, and be able to, in virtually real time. I mean, it's not going to be real time because we're not, on a daily basis, to be able to open up and see exactly where we are, to easily, with as little effort and as little friction as possible, be able to manipulate that data to learn any lesson that I want to learn about how our business is functioning and how it could be functioning better. So I want to be
Hmm.
able to, like, with as little effort as I can, check the time or the weather, check the health
Yeah.
of our business, and be able to make business decisions like that. And I would like to be able to look at the amount of
Hmm.
time that we spend dealing with our data and to say it's virtually zero. To say
Hmm.
that
Hmm.
and I'm not talking about the time it takes to input it or make sure it's accurate, or look at it and analyze it and interpret it and make decisions from it. I'm just talking about all the bits in between, all the sort of labor intensive, onerous, like, copy and paste this thing from here and paste it into the spreadsheet there, accidentally put a zero on it,
Yeah.
regret it, go back and realize you put a zero on it, that kind of stuff. And formulas and conditional formatting and all of these things that are like, can be quite diverting. I quite enjoy it. It's quite a laugh,
Hmm.
but I know that compared to all the other things I could be
Hmm.
doing, it's not high value for me. It's not. So, and I just think if there's
Yeah.
something that the software or an algorithm or whatever can do faster and easier than me, brilliant, happy days.
Hmm.
And it should
Yeah.
create more time for me and other people like me to do the things that the computers and the machines can't do. So that's the kind of
Yeah.
that's where I see the next 12 to 24 months. The other thing, and sort of
Hmm.
beyond that, is at the moment I'm still in the driving seat. I'm still, the data and the work with the data is still driven by me and what I'm interested in and what I want to learn. And I am pretty
Hmm.
interested and excited by the idea that you will be able to spot patterns and clusters without human involvement. That I could just
Yeah.
somehow,
Yeah.
you can go, well, actually, did you know that there's this correlation between this and this that you would never have thought to look
Hmm.
for? That kind of the golden needle in the
Hmm.
infinite haystack. That there is something in there that
Yeah.
I would never, as a human, think to look for, that's hiding in there. And that's really where you get into the kind of the AI
Yeah.
side of things. And I think we're still a way off that. But that is what
Yeah. It's an
the
exciting
sort of
thought, though, isn't it?
medium term future hopefully looks like.
Mhm.
Well, I was going to say the other thing is that if we're safeguarding the future of our business, which is we want to do, then
Yeah.
we're sort of, as the people who run it now, we want to leave a good inheritance to the people who take it forward when we're not in the business anymore. And so
Hmm.
part of the data work over the next few years will be making sure that the next bunch of people making decisions on behalf of our business are doing so with better information than we had, and are doing so with the best information that's
Yeah.
available and possible. Because I do think that
Hmm.
we've got loads of intelligent humans, and an intelligent human looking at the same data as me would probably make very similar decisions. They might see opportunities I don't see or risks
Hmm.
I don't see, but what I don't want to do is to have the business be reliant on the skill and experience and judgment of a handful of people who won't be in it forever. So this is like getting
Yeah.
the data side of things sorted is really like a huge investment in the sustainability of the company beyond the people who run it now. So that's the other really important thing for us.
Yeah. That's a really good point, Reese, and thanks for sharing. I think
You're
that
welcome.
just the one thing I was just going to come to earlier was the one piece of advice you'd have for other business owners out there thinking about they want to do more with their data, but they're just not sure where to start. Obviously, you guys invested and put work into it up front, and you've been on that journey. You've not finished that journey yet, but it's a great one to be on. Where
Yeah.
would you sort of say is a good starting point for other business leaders thinking about starting this journey?
I think it's a mindset. It's a mindset, which is do it now.
Yeah.
And as someone said, I think it might even have been Helen Tanner. I think she said that your data will never be as small as it is today. That
It's only getting bigger.
Tomorrow there'll be more of it. And so,
yeah,
however kind of put off you are by the size of the job now, imagine how put off you're going to be when there's even more of it. So I do think a little bit like saving for the future, or doing things that help your health in the long term, that there's a compounded value from doing it now. Why wouldn't you get on top of it earlier? So that would be my advice is seize the nettle, get on with it.
Yeah, that's a good point to finish on. Thank you so much for sharing your experiences.
You're welcome. It's a pleasure.
Amazing talking to you. You're awesome.
I've
Speak to you again soon. Take care.
Yeah, thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.